Greetings and welcome. And we're going to continue our Bible study series on Ezekiel. So I'm going to be getting to my second point. My first video was on the fact that Ezekiel was a nuisance to society, and that he was dealing with this hard-hearted generation that he couldn't really reach. So I'm going to go a little more in depth in that. My second point is going to be that Ezekiel never trembles. So that's one personality trait of Ezekiel that you need to have. So not only are you going to be a nuisance to society if you do what God told you to do, you're going to annoy people, just like Ezekiel annoyed people in his, back in his day. You also have to stand firm and not tremble, and you're going to need God to help you with that. So I'm going to continue reading in Ezekiel chapter 3. We're going to read verses 7 through 9. So I don't have to read very many verses because there is a lot you can gather just from every single verse here. So Ezekiel chapter 3 verses 7 through 9. But the house of Israel will not hearken unto thee, for they will not hearken unto me. For all the house of Israel are impudent and hard-hearted. Behold, I have made thy face strong against their faces, and thy forehead strong against their foreheads. As an adamant harder than flint have I made thy forehead. Fear them not, neither be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. So yeah, I already brought up verse 7 in the previous video, but so basically what I'm saying is God already told Ezekiel the results. He said, it's not going to work. I'm going to tell you to say something, and they're not going to listen. So, it's kind of interesting. God doesn't think like us. Like, if we think we already know it's going to fail, why would we do it? But no, not God. God thinks differently. He's like, he knows the end result, and he's still going to have you do it. He still tells Ezekiel to go out and do this thing, even though it's something that's not comfortable and it's going to have really bad results. And Ezekiel's not getting anything out of this. If at least one person listened, then maybe it'd be worth it. But he's saying like, God's telling him this is going to be hard. They're not going to listen. They're going to have these adamant foreheads, and they're just not going to listen to you. So these Ezekiel already knows the results, and I could bring up other illustrations in the Bible where the results were bad. Actually, yeah, I have it written down here, but a similar scenario actually. We're going a little off topic here. Is when God told Hosea, another prophet, Hosea, to marry a prostitute. No, that's in the Bible. That's in the Bible. God literally told him to marry, I think it was a harlot. It said a harlot. So God told Hosea to marry a prostitute, just to prove a point. Just for some symbolic reference, he told him to marry a harlot. And so Hosea already knew he was marrying a prostitute. This is ridiculous. But it's in the Bible. God literally told him to do this. And so it's kind of interesting. God already knows the results. He already knows it's not going to work. He even tells the prophet it's not going to work. But he's like, I still need you to do this. It's just unfathomable. It doesn't work with our logic, our thinking, why God does this. But there's always some reason. There's always some reason why God would does stuff like that. And we don't always understand why. Why does God do these things? So the important thing here is that Ezekiel pushes onward. God tells him yeah, it's not gonna work, but I am going to make you very stubborn and ornery. Ornery, I think that's the good word. It's a good word for it. The kind of attitude you need to have to deal with people these days. I'm not saying annoy people on purpose. I've already mentioned that in the previous video. You're not trying to annoy and anger people on purpose. I do know some of these more. I know some people like that from that or do try to witness, and they purposely anger people. I think they're sometimes out of line. But you are going to periodically annoy people. You are periodically going to say things that are going to make people angry if you're doing what God told you to do. And there is a time for that. There is a time to preach the gospel in a comforting, peaceful manner. And there is another time to be harsh. There's a time for that. There's a time for both scenarios. And you have wisdom in what the proper approach is. So that's the correct way to do things, not the way that the the woke mob teaches you, or the woke churches teach you to God is love, and always preach love and peace. And it's like, no, there's people going to hell. God is going to come back. Have you not read the book of Revelation? People are going to die. Like, have you not read the book of Revelation? You want to ask these people sometimes, have you not read the book of Revelation? Have you not read the Old Testament? Do you not understand about the kind of God you're dealing with here? So yeah, so just like, remember, this is the kind of people you're dealing with. The only comforting words God has for Ezekiel in this case is, I'm going to make you more stubborn than they are. That is it. I'm going to give you a harder forehead than they'd have. They're going to tire out before you will. They're going to give up. They're going to give up. They're going to just give up. Like, you're going to have perseverance and stubbornness that will exceed theirs. That's it. That's it. That's the only comforting, positive thing God says here, is that you will. They're impudent and hard-hearted. Your face is stronger than their face. Your forehead will be stronger than their forehead. And then verse 9 says, as an adamant harder than flint have I made thy forehead. So that actually brings up a very interesting point about the word adamant. So when I first did the sermon, like many years ago, actually, when I first did the study, I read up adamant, and I thought it was a mythological rock. Like, that's actually what I heard, that it was a mythological rock. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting. It's like God saying, I'm going to make your forehead harder than some rock that doesn't even exist. Like, that's how stubborn you're going to have to be. You're going to have this forehead of like impossible, impenetrable, like stubbornness. But recently I actually looked up the word adamant again, and actually it comes from like adamas or adamantos. I think it's a Greek root actually, and I think there's a Latin root as well, and from some other languages. But basically, it just means diamond. It actually comes from the same word that means diamond. So adamant is like it's basically a diamond, and I think that's a pretty good description too. Is that Ezekiel's forehead is as hard as diamond, and we know diamonds are very hard. So that's how hard Ezekiel's forehead was, as diamond. So it's like you're gonna headbutt them. That's what it's basically God's son. Like, Ezekiel, you're gonna butt heads with these people, and you will persevere. I will give you the strength to not give up, even though they're not listening to you. So you do what I called you to do, and that's it. You don't worry about the results. And that's another point I have to stress, especially during these times when people don't really want to listen to the gospel. It's you're gonna need perseverance. You're gonna give up when you don't see results. You get rewarded in heaven. God rewards you based on effort. He doesn't reward you based on results. In the real world, you get rewarded based on results. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into something. You get rewarded for results. So if you're not talented at something, you have to work harder. Then, well, that's just tough luck. That's just how it is. You get rewarded for results. So if something isn't working well, this job isn't working out for you, then people just pick another job. They pick something they're better at. That's what people do. You're gonna focus on what they're better at, and they're gonna ignore the stuff they're bad at. And that's just how it makes sense in the real world. You get rewarded based on results. You get paid. Although jobs these days you get paid the same no matter what. If you're a businessman, you're running a business, you're an entrepreneur, you definitely get rewarded based on results. You're going to work harder because you want better results. But God doesn't do that. God rewards based on the heart. He sees the inward. He doesn't look at the outward. He sees the inward. So he rewards based on effort. And it's very different because, so we're going to say, like, why is this person doing something? It's a waste of time, because we're judging their work based on the outcome. Like, well, why is their church so small? Like, why is this pastor running some little church in the middle of nowhere with like 5 people there? And he's been doing it for years. It's like, what's the point of that? And it's like, no, but God sees the effort. God sees the effort. And so, it's kind of hard to not to think like God, because we don't think like God. We're not going to think like, oh wow, this is an amazing work, But God sees the heart, When Jesus told about that woman, the poor woman that put in, like, was it 2 pence, or I forget what the monetary unit was, but she put in a really small amount of money, and all these rich people put in a lot more. But Jesus said, no, she gave a lot more. based on how much she has, the percentage of her wealth. She gave up like everything. These men, they gave up like a small fraction of their net worth, So he's saying, so Jesus, God, they judge differently. They don't judge like we judge, God judges completely on different standards. So Ezekiel, he's going to keep pushing forward, and God's going to reward Ezekiel based on the effort. He's going to reward you based on your effort. So, you have to have the correct motive, the correct heart attitude to just keep going. Because if you're going to be like Gehazi, I already talked about Gehazi a lot in the last Bible study on him. I had 4 videos on that, and Gehazi, he was a mercenary. He would not be like Ezekiel. He'd give up. If Gehazi had to put up with these people, he'd give up immediately. He'd be like, man, this isn't working out for me. I'm not really seeing any benefit to me. I'm done. Like he just quits because he's not seeing any profit out of it. He just gives up. It'd be like Ezekiel. You have to keep going no matter what. So you have to be not swayed by peer pressure. Now, this is an important one. I want to point this out. We just got to verse 9 here. In verse 9 it says, as an adamant harder than flint have I made thy forehead. Then it says here in verse 9, after that, fear them not, neither be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. This is a very important point. We're talking about peer pressure. It says, fear them not. So we obviously don't fear them. Unfortunately, a lot of people are weak-kneed. We're weak. Many of us are weak. We don't have any backbone to stand on, really. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be talking more about like how a man should be a leader, and stand up, and how the lack of manhood's pretty apparent, I think, in the last few decades, I think. But this applies to everybody, men and women. But particularly, I'd say that the leadership just isn't there anymore where like it should be. And we could, you could talk a long time about why that happened. So here it says, fear them not, neither be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. So neither be dismayed at their looks. So that's how weak they are. See, in the olden days, persecution was like physical persecution, like you would get killed for being baptized or being a believer. Your life was at stake. In the Soviet Union and other places, your job was at stake, or you could be sent to the gulags or something. It was bad. And even in modern times, like even in the 60s, like in the Romania, like if you read about what's his name, Richard Wurmbrand, if you read his book, I think it was Romania. I forget the details, but man, he went through a lot, and I think that was only like in the 50s or 60s. So that wasn't that long ago, and this is Europe. This isn't some like backwards third world country. Okay, in some ways, yeah, it probably does still have some of that third world country, but aura to it. But this isn't Africa. This isn't like Southeast Asia. This isn't some kind of like it's Europe. It's supposed to be like respectable, but no, there was still this persecution going on, and even a little bit afterwards, after World War II, and so yeah, and even under the Soviet Union, you had a lot of this going on, persecution. What kind of persecution do you face now as for being a Christian? Like nothing. If you're an average Christian, you face no persecution because you're not going to stand up for anything. So you're not going to face persecution because you don't stand up for anything. You might go to church sometimes, and you're never going to witness to anybody. So you're not going to face persecution for being a Christian. Now, if you go a little outside of your comfort zone and actually start telling people about God, telling people what the Bible says, mention hell once in a while, put Bible verses on your car and if you just start doing stuff like that, you might eventually annoy someone, possibly, very quickly. A lot of people would generally just say like, hey, I don't want to talk about this. They'll try to be nice about it. They'll just say like, hey, let's just not talk about this. They'll try to change the topic. Sometimes you will get a little more of an aggressive response. So, but most of the time, that's what's going to happen. So here it's talking about neither be dismayed at their looks. So that's how weak people are. Someone gives you a dirty look, and all of a sudden you're like, it's like people hate being judged. That's basically what it is. People hate being judged. So peer pressure is a very strong force in like among children, elementary school, middle school, high school kids. Peer pressure, and it works back then. And then you think like, oh, adults grow up, they're above that. No, adults are just as susceptible to peer pressure. They're just as weak. In fact, sometimes I would say even more weak, because you have, as a kid, you just have like, what do you have? Your reputation is basically the only thing that you have of value at that point in your life as a kid, is the reputation you have in school. So it's your social standing. It's how your peers view you. Some people have, like having a high social status, and they're not willing to do things that are going to put that in. You're not going to jeopardize that. So a child might not, witness. A kid might not witness because they're not, they don't want to jeopardize that. They just, that reputation, they don't want to get bullied, or sometimes not even being bullied. Like I said, here it just says looks. Someone gives you a dirty look. That's enough. That's enough to discourage witnessing a dirty look. People judging you. That's it. People not wanting to be your friend. And it's a strong force that people don't want to put up with. People don't want to go against that. They don't want to go against the culture. So that's why the attitude and the spirit of Christianity has been changed. It's been changed into a spirit of fitting in rather than fighting it. Well, if you fit in, if you try to fit in, you've already become like the lost world. None of that Christianity remains. You've just become like the world. That's why when you go to some of these churches, these mega churches, like, it doesn't really stand out. Jesus is like, it's just this cute label, we believe in Jesus. That's it. It doesn't, there's really nothing that they stand for, no morals. It's diluted. The morals have been diluted. So this is what kids put up with. What about adults? Adults have more to lose. Not only do they have reputation, they also have money. They can lose their job, their social circles. They have more, actually, and they're weaker. And adults sometimes are more. Kids have some of that innocence and then the naivety that kind of causes bravery. Like they can be a little courageous just because they're more innocent and naive about something. They're like, yeah, praise Jesus. And then an adult, they might have just lost that completely, and they're not going to want to stand up. They've just gotten weaker over the years. So in some ways, I'd say adults are even more susceptible to peer pressure. So peer pressure is a real thing. It's everywhere. Nobody wants to be judged. It's especially now. It also discourages critical thinking. Pretty much at this point, everybody just wants to appease the woke mob. That's it. You can't say anything mean. You can't criticize anybody because the woke mob will just tear you apart. You're a racist, you're evil, you're wicked, whatever. They'll put any label on you. They'll find any whatever. Instead of using critical thinking, like that's a lost art, is thinking, like actual thinking, and judging arguments based on their merits and validity, and actually thinking logically about things. That's been lost. Okay. It's been unfortunately lost quite a long time ago, and it's very few people still possess that skill to logically look at something. So it's just been lost, unfortunately. So Ezekiel dealt with very hard-hearted people in his day, and this was like 600 BC, I think. We're in the year 2000 AD. It's been 2,600 years. People haven't changed. People are still stubborn and hard-hearted. Those Jews were very stubborn. We got plenty of stubborn, woke liberals and whatever you want to call them these days. We have plenty of those in this country, and they're just not going to listen. They're not going to listen to reason. So you do not want to be, basically peer pressure, very strong force, and you have to fight against it. You have to fight. Your flesh is going to fight it. Your flesh is going to fight it. Your flesh is going to want to fit in with the crowd. And it's easy. That's an easy thing to do. Just go with the wave. Don't fight the crowd. Don't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat. I'm sure going to tell you, don't rock the boat. And if you want to stand before God and not be discouraged and not be embarrassed and shamed for the life you've lived, then you are going to have to rock the boat sometimes. Even if just a little, as a start. Get used to rocking the boat. You're going to have to do things that are going to go counterculture. You know, the culture is to just tolerate everything. No, you're not going to have to don't tolerate everything. Don't tolerate sin. Sin is not okay. If it's against the Bible, it's a sin. Okay, it doesn't matter what the culture thinks about it. Okay, if it's against the Bible, if you know it's wrong, it's a sin. Okay, so don't just like that. That's basically what it is. Like, you are gonna have to point out sin. You're gonna have to preach against sin if you want to do right. Otherwise, you're just gonna get swept along with the mob. You'll just be another worthless Christian. And there's plenty of them. They're everywhere. And it's very easy to become a worthless Christian. And you have to fight it. You have to fight your flesh to not become that worthless Christian, and to fight it so that you are not wasting your time. You're redeeming the time. And so you're not embarrassed at the end of your life. Like I mentioned with Gehazi, he was at the end of his life, all he could do was talk about Elisha's accomplishments, but he did not have his own. And you won't have your own accomplishments. You'll be able to talk about others, maybe. If you're if you have a correct enough heart with God to recognize what a good Christian is. Because unfortunately, the way a lot of Christians are these days, they don't even know what a good Christian is. Someone that is a good Christian and doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to think that guy's a lunatic. If Apostle Paul and Peter lived today, the average Christian would think they're lunatics. They would not see, like what we read in the Bible, we're like, yeah, Apostle Paul, Peter, these guys are amazing, right? That's what you read. But what if you actually met them today? And you saw how they live their lives? Would you actually think that? Most people, most Christians, probably not. They would think those guys are crazy. Who are these homeless bums? That's what they would see when they saw Paul and Peter. They would see homeless people. These homeless bums that are like just completely do not fit in with society whatsoever. No car, no money. Like, I mean, okay, barely any money. Like, no wealth. Maybe just some clothes. They did not look esteemed or prestigious. They're not like the Christians that we have today, you know. They would stand out, and most Christians would not recognize the power of God upon these people, the Spirit of God upon these men. So that's what we're dealing with now. Is that Christians are so far gone, they don't even know what a good Christian is. They wouldn't even be able to praise a good role model of a Christian, because that good role model of a Christian would look like a lunatic to them, because they don't recognize spirituality. And they would praise some mega church pastor that doesn't even know the Bible. They would think that's a good Christian. Like, I'm not even going to name names. At some point I probably will. A lot of you, you know, if you watch this video, you probably already know a lot of these people, but it's different. Biblical Christianity is not going to be what is preached mainstream. That is not biblical Christianity. And you can find out what it is. Read the Bible. You'll understand what I'm saying is true. Pray to God about it. So yeah, so you're going to have that, you know, like I said, you're going to have that forehead of adamant with you need to be like Ezekiel. And so fight the peer pressure. Fight it. It's going to be really hard, but you have to fight it. So, because like that just shows you how powerful eye contact is. Just being judged. People hate that. Just being judged just by eyesight. So yeah, don't let them scare you. Like I preached, we did Bible preaching on the streets. I've done that, you know, holding Bible verses, preaching. And I would just preach. Like, you don't even look people in the face. Like, because when people stare at you and they just give you like this look, like that's what's going to discourage people. Just like, oh, like, it's like, what do you care? You're not going to see that person again. It's like people get discouraged by that. They think they're being judged, or they just get weak. Because they want to be dignified, right? They want to be dignified. So you need, your dignity is going to come from God. God gives you your dignity. Your value, validation. That's the other word. People seek validation these days. I've heard that word brought up online many times about validation. How people like to be validated. God validates you. You get validated by God. This world, you want their validation? Like, you seriously want their validation. And okay, a lot of people do, and they give up and they cave in because they want the validation in the world. No, you need just, that's it. God's validation exceeds all others. If you're right with God and you know you're doing right, then you can sleep well at night. That's it. You need God's validation. The world, forget that. It's going to perish. You're not going to get anything out of that kind of validation. Maybe you'll just get along with some people, have a better job, but you can't rely on man. Do not rely on man or women. You can't rely on people. You have to rely on God. So let's see. Yeah, let's end this video now, and I'm gonna move on. So I think probably one more video will end this on Ezekiel. My third point of this sermon will be that you are nothing without God. So I'm gonna continue that. I'm gonna have a few more verses to read in Ezekiel chapter 13, and yeah, that'll be it. So I'm gonna end this video now. So see you next time.